Guys, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down with my friend Luke Diamond, who's an ultra runner and an Army veteran. He graduated from the University of Minnesota in 2019 with a degree in journalism before serving 6 years in the U.S. Army as a PSYOP specialist. In 2024, he ran his first 55K ultramarathon, and since then has run a second 50K and the JFK 50-mile ultramarathon. He's currently training for his first 100-mile race as he begins his studies as an MBA student at UCLA. Guys, we had a great conversation, and Luke is a stand-up dude. I am looking forward to you guys being able to listen. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, turn it up. This one's for the bros. Early mornings, late nights, chasing down goals. Built from the grind, yeah, we forge in the cold. Talk real life, no filter, just soul. Welcome to the Super Bros podcast, where we level up, stay sharp, and never fall back. From mindset to muscle, yeah, we cover it all. If no one ain't win the bros, then you answer in the call. Let's get it.
All right, man. Welcome to the show. Appreciate you making time to be on here. Glad we could finally make it happen.
Yeah, of course, dude. I'm just excited to talk today.
Yeah. We were looking forward to this for a while. So I came across your Instagram page. That was how I really started following your journey. Obviously, super interested in ultra running, but tell me a little bit about what made you want to start posting about it and sharing your journey.
Oh, interesting. That's an interesting place to start because it's further into the ultra running journey. So I started ultra running in 2022. That's when I started training for my first ultra marathon. And then I ran one. It was kind of an experience unto itself, and we can talk about that if you want. But when I was training for my 50-miler, my first 50-mile ultra marathon last year, something that I had been struggling with in my personal life was feeling like I didn't want to take advantage of opportunities because if I did that, then I might look stupid. And it was kind of just this fear of how people were going to perceive me. And I was like, dude, you have got to do something about that. Like, I keep losing opportunities to this fear of like how other people are going to, like what people are going to think of me if I put myself out there.
Right.
So I was like, you know what? What's an easy way to like exercise that muscle? And so for 50 days leading up to my 50-mile ultra marathon, I was like, I'm going to put out one post on Instagram per day. It's going to be about running and we'll just see what happens. When I tell you that I had truly no idea what I was doing, and if you go back and like look at my original posts, they are god awful. But that was the point. Well, dude, that was the point because I was like, if I can set myself this 24-hour deadline every day, I know that the work that I'm going to put out is not going to be perfect. And that was the war that I waged against my inner perfectionist. And I got a post out every single day for 50 days. And over the course of it, we can talk more about Instagram, and I'm interested in your journey as well. But the more that I posted, people started following me. And then it's like you get these strangers who start like cheering you on and sending you these encouraging messages and telling you that they like your content. And it's just like, this is insane. Like, I haven't even been thinking of this as content really. This is just a personal project, but now it's kind of become something more. So that's why I originally got into it.
Yeah, I love that you held yourself accountable to that deadline, so to speak, because I feel like a lot of people, and I've had these conversations with a lot of my friends too. They're like, oh, I don't know what to post about. Like, I just want people to like it. And it's like, well, lucky for you, there are 8 billion people in the world, and most of them have an iPhone at this point. So at some point in your journey, whether it's 30 people or 1,000 people, somebody's going to see that video, whether it's good or bad, and they're going to have an opinion about it. And it just allows you to get feedback on what people actually enjoy watching or looking at or whatever. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just like speed kills at the end of the day. So if you're trying to do something that's kind of bigger than yourself, just put it out there, and you can always take it down if if you're not satisfied with it at the end of the day.
Yeah, well, and after I completed that first project, which was just 50 posts, I didn't really have a plan after that. I was like, I'm just going to do this and see what happens. But then I grew my followers from 400. So basically like an Instagram nobody, which is fine. I was one of those people who never posted. I was just a lurker. And so I had 400 followers who were just friends and family. And at the end of those 50 days, I had about like 2,500, which isn't huge numbers, but when you consider where I started, Like it was pretty significant growth. And I had people messaging me asking me like, what's going to be next?
What's
And
the
when I
secret?
didn't, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I stopped posting, I had some people message me and they're like, "Hey, dude, where'd you go? Like, we've been looking forward to your content." And I was like, "This is insane. This is
Right.
insane that my
Right.
content is helping people, even though that kind of is the whole idea to begin with, is to help people."
Hmm.
But when that magic kind of starts to happen and you start to get that traction, you're like, "Oh, damn! Like this thing that I thought was just other people, it's like it's happening to me now." And so now I've kind of gotten into posting content as more of a practice, and yeah, continuing to grow the audience.
Cool, man. Well, let's take it back in time. I love hearing about everybody's kind of personal journey. Let's start with where you grew up, where you're from originally, and what was that like?
Oh boy. Okay, big question. I'll have to try to make this concise. So
No,
I
no,
grew up.
you have plenty of time. Don't worry about it.
Okay. I grew up outside of New Orleans. I'm actually sitting in my hometown right now. It's a little town called Covington, Louisiana, about an hour north of New Orleans. And I grew up in a very religious and conservative community, Christian, mostly non-denominational and Baptist. Grew up in a very religious family, which really served me in a lot of ways. Grew up going to Christian school, but has now become the big contrast point with what people are now following me for on Instagram. I didn't play any sports growing up. I had no athletic background. I was not, yeah, I was like not the kid that anybody really wanted on their team in like PE class. And I was very much an arts kid. Like that's where I shined. And theater was really my scene. And so I did well in my arts classes. And eventually there is a high school in New Orleans that is specifically for arts students where you can basically go and take arts, like specialized arts classes before you audition for college conservatories. And so I went there in high school for 3 years, studied theater. And when I was on the brink of graduation, it was kind of time to sunset, like the whole artist thing. It was like, all right, this was fun to study, but like now I kind of have to start a real life. And so I was like, I'll audition for a few of my like dream programs. And if I get into any of them, I'll go. And so I auditioned for an acting school in Minnesota that was very competitive and I had a very low chance of getting into it. And then they called me and they were like, "Hey, do you want to come be part of this program?" And I was like, damn. I was like, okay, well, like this
No,
isn't this
no,
opportunity. Yeah. I was like, this opportunity is not going to knock twice.
right.
So I went to Minnesota and continued to study theater there. And then eventually that course kind of took a different turn. But yeah, as far as where I grew up here in Covington, I'm literally sitting in my parents' house right now. I got out of the military in January and I'm going to grad school later this year. So we're crashing with mom and dad for a few months. So yeah, we're sitting right
Yeah.
here where it all started.
Heck yeah, man. Nothing wrong with that. So you said you got accepted into the acting school. Did you attend it, correct?
Yep, I did. Yeah, I did attend.
Yeah. What was that like?
It was interesting because the program was a classical acting program, which basically means we studied a bunch of Shakespeare, et cetera, et cetera. And your entire class, which are the people who you train with every day, 5 days a week, was only 19 other students. So we had a very close knit community in the acting program that I was in. So I was taking arts classes at a theater during the day, but then I was also taking academic classes at University of Minnesota. And basically the university and the theater had a drug deal where if the students did that, you could graduate with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree.
Gotcha.
So I did that for 3 years, had a really positive experience. But when I was coming into my senior year, I feel like it's easy for people to look at somebody leaving the art scene and be like, "Oh, great, they finally woke up and like realized that like you can't play games your whole life. Like you actually have to get a job like the rest of us." And that was not my experience. My experience was that as I was getting closer to graduation, I started reflecting more on, okay, like what kind of impact am I trying to have here? In the grandest scheme of things, how am I trying to leave the world better than I found it? That kind of a thing. And I was like, even if I reach the peak of success in this acting career, like what is that going to amount to? Like sitcom reruns? I was like, it wasn't a meaningful path to me, or not meaningful enough anyway. And so Going into my senior year, I changed majors to journalism because I thought, well, I can stay in the storytelling vein, which is what I love, but I can tell stories with a little more import and a little more immediacy to them. Did that for a year and a half, was working at a small newspaper in Minneapolis. And then when I was coming up to my graduation, I had to add a year to my undergrad to get my journalism degree. When I was coming up to graduation, I realized that my ex and I had just broken up. I didn't have anything tying me down to Minneapolis. And I was young. I was 25. I was healthy. And I was like, well, if I'm going to go on a big adventure, now is probably the time to do that. Like, this is probably going to be my last big chance to go on a big adventure. So I was like, oh, well, what's the big adventure I could go on? And we can get more into that, but it ended up, not to spoil anything, but it was going into the military. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up military side.
I was actually going to ask you like what the moment was that made you decide to take that jump. Cause I mean, really the audience that we're not necessarily targeting, it's a majority young men. It can be men and women, but I feel like there are a lot of people that are lacking direction in their life, or maybe they just don't know what that purpose is. And I feel like everybody faces that. It's almost a singular moment, or maybe a series of singular moments where it's like, okay, I don't like where I'm at. The only thing that could happen if this goes wrong is I just end up right where I am right now. Mm-hmm. What's the next step? So that's kind of what it was for me too. But I mean, let's talk about, did you have a specific moment where you're like, hey, this is going to be my adventure? Or was it, one of those kind of happenstance things?
There wasn't a specific moment, but there was a very specific decision. And I'm really glad that you asked me about it, because this is kind of the meat of what has continued to pay dividends for me. When I was coming up to the end of my undergraduate experience, I thought, okay, I want to go on a big adventure. And I was thinking, okay, well, what makes a worthwhile adventure? And my background is in storytelling. And so in a story, the basic structure of any story is that you leave the place that you know to go pursue a goal. Mm-hmm. In lots of stories, it's like to go slay a dragon of some sort, or like slay some kind of a monster. And then you get the gold or the reward from that monster, and then you can bring it back to your community, and then you share that with everybody. And that's the basic setup of an adventure story. Right. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to go on an adventure, what is the scariest thing I could possibly imagine doing with my life right now? And as a gay theater kid, going into the military was the scariest thing I could think of, because I didn't grow up playing sports. I wasn't bullied in school, but a lot of the guys in my school, they kind of just didn't know what to do with me, because growing up, I was kind of like flamboyant theater kid. And so like the guys didn't really know how to include me and stuff. And so I didn't have what I now in retrospect have realized is that one of the things that sports does for young men in grade school is that it gives them a space with other men where they can all affirm each other's masculinity in a way. They can all look at each other. It's like you have a proving ground where you can test yourself, and other guys can look at your performance and they can say you did good, you're one of us. And I never had that experience. And so I thought, okay, well, that would be absolutely terrifying to have that experience, because those guys always kind of intimidated me in school, and I don't know how to shoot a gun. I've never played a sport. I've never done any kind of contact, like martial art or football or anything. And so I was like, okay, well, yeah, that would be pretty terrifying if I went into the military. And then I thought, okay, well, what would be the most extreme form of the military to go into? And I did my research, and I figured out special operations was a thing. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to go for special operations then.
Extreme.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I was like,
baby.
Yeah. Well, dude, I was like, if we're going to send it on this, this is already such an insane idea that it's like, why would I half send it on, if you're going to go on an adventure, why would you half send an adventure? And so I was like, no, dude, we're full sending this. I was like, I'm going to try to go special operations. And so I enlisted as an 18 X-ray, which is a special forces candidate, Green Beret boys, made it to selection, got my ass absolutely handed to me at selection. So that was the first big setback on the adventure. Mm-hmm. But it ended up being a great pivot point for me, because when I washed out, we were able to transfer over to psychological operations if that interested us. And
Okay.
PSYOP is literally storytelling for the military. And so I was like, oh, this is a great lane for me. And so I pivoted into PSYOP. They have their own special operations like pipeline with a selection and a qualification course, et cetera. And I did that. And yeah, and ended up being at my unit for 3 years, deployed, did a few TDYs overseas. And in retrospect, we all have things about our military careers, some of which work out and some don't. But it's like in retrospect, it was like, you know what? My insane plan worked. Like that plan that I had in my crappy little apartment in Minnesota as like a college student who didn't really know what he was doing with his life, like it worked. I chose something scary. I went and did it, discovered ultra running along the way. And now that's something that I'm able to give back to everybody else. And it's like, hey dude, that's a worthwhile experience to me.
Yeah, that's super cool. And like you probably had arguably a more full career than some people who stay in for multiple decades. They're like always chasing certain experiences, but they might not get it. So it's tough to see it when you're in it probably, but when you look back, you're like, oh, did some pretty cool shit for a little bit,
Yeah.
There's a meme that I saw about 75th Ranger Regiment where this kid's like in a recruiting office and they're like, hey man, you want to be an Army Ranger? And he's like 17. He's like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And then he's like in airborne school, and then all of a sudden he gets to his unit, and then he's deployed, and then he's like in combat, and then finally he's at the gate like on terminal leave. He's like, well, that fucking sucked. It's like, but I did it.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that's funny.
So as you were, I feel like not very many people get to hear the perspective of someone who went through that 18 X-ray pipeline.
Oh, yeah.
What was that like, going through that? Obviously, you mentioned your background, but just being with a bunch of dudes for a long time, going through that pipeline, you're constantly struggling. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for the 18 X-ray pipeline start as you have to go to infantry OSUT, so basically basic training and infantry AIT, but they're smushed together so that on the last day of basic training, you just fall asleep in your bunk in your basic training bay. And then you wake up the next day and it's the first day of infantry AIT, and your drill sergeants come in and they smoke the shit out of you and nothing changes. So we had that for 6 months. And looking back on all of the training that I did for the 6 years that I was in, I truly think some of the most miserable was like during those 6 months.
I bet.
Just because it's like you don't have any agency over your life. It's like every day is the same. Basic training deprives you of all of your creature comforts. I remember one of my friends and I were talking about it once in basic, and we're like, how would you describe this to a civilian? Somebody was like, they were like, it's like having the worst day of your civilian life every single day for 6 months. And that basically was it, because you just don't have any of the creature comforts. You're constantly like getting your teeth kicked in by the drill sergeants, et cetera, et cetera. Infantry AIT, then I went to airborne school. Are you airborne qualified?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. But it sounds like it might be coming down the line.
Working on it,
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So you go to airborne school, which, you jump out of airplanes. And the first time you do that, it's just utterly terrifying. But you do it, graduate. And then from there, I went from Fort Benning to Fort Bragg, where they have, it's called Special Forces Preparation Course, SFPC.
Yep.
And it was, I forget how long I was in it, maybe 12 weeks, maybe shorter than that. And it is basically a conditioning course that specifically prepares you for Special Forces Assessment and Selection, SFAS. So you walk everywhere with a big ass ruck on. You have a rubber ducky rifle, which is just a rubber replica of a rifle that you have to carry with you everywhere. And it's just showing up for early morning workouts. During the day, you're taking some kind of class. So maybe it's a land navigation class. Maybe it's a, how to pack your rucksack classes during the day. And then in the afternoon, you have a second workout. So you're doing 2-a-days with just a bunch of other 18 X-rays, a bunch of dudes.
Right.
And once you finish SFPC, then you all get on the bus to Camp McCall to go to SFAS. And then it's basically you're in the crucible. And it's, can you, how far can you make it? Are you familiar with SFAS, the breakdown of it?
Yeah, a little familiar. A little familiar.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
say
Well,
that.
basic.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. So the first week you have gate week, which are just long rucks and runs. The second week is the star course, which is, the Army's probably like most notorious land navigation course. And then the last week is team week, where you're basically just moving a ton of really, really, really heavy shit, really, 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 really far with a team. And yeah, that's where I kind of fell apart.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so SFAS, and yeah, dude, it's funny because when you get out, you look back on it and you realize just how much tunnel vision you have, because from the day you get into the Army, you're just like, I have to get selected. I have to get selected. I have to get selected. And everything feels like very life or death. But then once you break out of that pipeline and kind of get a regular military, you get into your unit and you have a regular day job. It's like you look back and it's like, that was not real life at all. Like
No.
it was just like an extremely intense. I mean, I ended up being in the pipeline for 2.5 years in between SF and PSYOP. And so it's just like, damn, dude, that was 2.5 years of like pass and fail tests every day. So yeah, mentally pretty intense.
It's a ton of stress to go through too, because you're just always looking for that affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take you after that was all over to really kind of settle into what you were doing next for PSYOPs?
I would say not very long at all, because what I realized during the 18 X-ray pipeline is that special forces attracts a certain kind of soldier. In my experience, this is completely just my opinion, but it attracts a certain kind of soldier. And that soldier tends to be the dude who dominated in sports in high school. The community, I mean, the dudes are ripped. There's a little bit of dick measuring, involved. And it's just oh yeah, you're good.
That big?
Oh, yeah. 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 And so it's kind of bros. Like that's probably a good way to put it.
Sure.
And I
Yeah.
realized as I was in it that I was like, these guys are cool. Like they're kind of a tribe unto themselves. And also these are not the people I'm trying to spend the rest of my Army career with. And so when I got to make that pivot towards PSYOP, which was a much more diverse group just as far as personalities go, because it's kind of a brainier crew. I mean, you still have guys who are in great shape, but just in general, it's guys who are more invested in storytelling than, just like laying down lead and like bench pressing, which is fine, but that just was not really like my scene.
Right.
That when I got to PSYOP, I was like, oh, dude, I'm ready to roll. Like, this is it. I kind of felt like I found my tribe. And
That's
so, yeah. And so I hit the ground running over there. And when I got to my unit, it was kind of a fluke of paperwork that I was the only person available to do an overseas within a couple months of getting to my unit. And I was going to go over there solo. And so, I mean, who doesn't want to get to their unit and for their command to be like, hey, man, do you want to get on this flight to Asia by yourself to go do like PSYOP things, like overseas?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was like, oh, hell yeah, like let's do it. So I started off on a great note in PSYOP, and yeah, I hit the ground running, and yeah, it didn't take me very long to settle in over there.
That's awesome. Do you have any specific memories that stand out from your time in PSYOPs, like when you were deployed or just with your unit?
Yes, I can't. I'll have to, delete some details from them.
I should have screened that. I should have screened that question. Is there anything you can talk about that stands out to you as a positive memory?
Yeah, definitely.
Gotcha.
I guess two. One was TDY in Asia. The battalion that I was aligned with was basically working in Indo-PACOM. So that's where I spent all my time when I was TDY or deployed. And there was one TDY where we had a free weekend, and I got to go to like a tropical island out of like a computer screensaver, because we just had the free time, and it's like you're getting per diem while you're over there. And so we're like, sweet, like let's go do it. And where we were in the world, the prices were very cheap. And so we were staying in this little resort, and I was like, I wonder what the most expensive room here is. And it was like $200 a night. And so I rented, so I got like the penthouse of this resort to myself that was literally on the beach. And yeah, and we got to spend a weekend there. And I have pictures of myself like on that balcony with like the sun setting behind the palm trees. And, you know, all of that's idyllic and beautiful kind of for its own reasons. But I think the thing that makes it stand out, I'd be curious if you've had this experience in the Army, is that there are moments in your military service where you look around at everything and you're just like, dude, how did I end up here? Like, how did I get here? And it's like so much of military service is not fun. And so much of it can just feel like day in, day out, like bullshit. And so much of it can just feel like dealing with like the dumb Army. But it's like every once in a while, dude, it's like all of the stars align and you end up in a place in the world where you just like stop and look around and you're like, I'm the luckiest person on planet Earth. Like, how in the world did I end up here? Or at least that's been my experience. I don't know. Have you experienced anything similar to that?
Dude, I definitely have. There's been a lot of moments where I just stop and I look around. I'm like, wow, if I took a video of what's going on right now, I probably wouldn't do it justice.
Yeah.
You telling me about where you were at just now reminded me of a moment I had. So I had the opportunity to go to Bucharest for a little bit. There's this really nice Airbnb. The host was amazing. It was like basically penthouse, like you described. Yeah. Probably one of the nicest places I've ever stayed. I go out on the balcony. I'm like, I got to take a video real quick. I need a video journal of what I'm feeling right now. And I just put the camera on myself. I'm like, 12-year-old me never thought he'd be somewhere like this. This is pretty sick. And it's just like this perfect view of the city. It's, you know, early in the morning. I'm like, wow, I haven't really made it yet, but like, this is pretty sick. Like, this is what my life could look like if I continue to work hard. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And then definitely like you have moments in the field and stuff too, where you're like, wow, like just in nature with the boys. This is pretty sick.
100%, dude. Yeah.
Did you,
go ahead.
Can
I slide in one other memory? Because I think this really was like peak memory for my entire military service.
Yeah.
And one of my deployments, I ended up on a train with a long train ride with a lot of people from the U.S. Embassy in the country that I was working in. And the ambassador was there as well. And it was a small embassy and the ambassador was very personable. I didn't know him very well, but he was walking up and down the train and popped into my little train car where I was sitting with a Department of State person. And he was like, hey, y'all should come back to my car because, of course, the U.S. ambassador had like a whole train car to himself. And it was very nice. And he's like, yeah, you should come back. We're all like having mimosas. And so I was like, oh, okay. I was like, sure.
Yeah.
And so we went back and sure enough, he had like this whole train car to himself. And there were some Marines in there and some Department of State people. And it was a weekend. It was totally a leisure thing. This was not a work thing at all. But we were just kind of kicking it, drinking mimosas. And then the ambassador was saying, he's like, there's other ambassadors on the train right now because we were coming back from an event. And he's like, I should probably go get them. So we're like, okay. And so he went and got them and they came back and they were drinking mimosas. And again, it was one of those like zoom out, like, you know, immediate zoom out moments where I was like, I am sitting in a train car in the middle of Asia right now with the US ambassador, the British ambassador, and the ambassador from like 2 other countries rushing mimosas, like in the VIP car of this train. I was like, this is wild. This is wild. But it really, like, I think in training, when you are sucking in training, you are holding out hope that somewhere down the line, there is going to be a day where the shit that you're going through is going to feel worth it. And when those days come, when those days arrive, it's like you're just trying to open your senses as much as you can just to be grateful for it. Because you're just like, damn, dude, this is it. This is it. Like, this is what Luke, who is wearing a rucksack, like sucking right now in the woods of Fort Bragg, like this is exactly the day that he was living for. And like, we're here, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. It's all about the moment. It's not about the outcome. And I don't know if you've ever seen this movie. So American Underdog, it's about Kurt Warner. He was just a kid like in freaking central Iowa or whatever. He got undrafted by the NFL, went on to become a Super Bowl MVP, but totally incredible odds, right? But there was a quote from the movie, and I actually watched this last night, but they were saying it's not what you do, it's who you become along the way that matters.
Yeah, definitely.
So, you know, going through all those trials and tribulations and the failure and having to reset and pivot and redirect, you know, you have all those moments where it's like, I'm actually becoming a better person by virtue of going through these hard things. And like these little moments it's the payoff for the suffering, right? Like you get to be a little bit more present, you get to enjoy those things. And I think that's probably what I'll remember the most about being in the military.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that plays off something I posted on Instagram recently, and I think you commented on it when this kind of jumps ahead to the ultra running thing. But this idea that I think when people think of running an ultra marathon, or for that matter, achieving any big goal, they think like, man, like if I could just be a marathoner, like if I could cross that finish line at a marathon or an ultra marathon, like imagine who I would be. Like that would be this like moment of transformation where I could become the kind of person who I wish I could be right now. And if that gets your running shoes on and like gets you out the door, like more power to you. I'm not going to tell you anything to the contrary. What I will tell you is that when you do eventually accomplish that goal, you realize that the transformation does not happen at the finish line. The transformation happens at every step toward the finish line. And when you get to the finish line, like my first ultra marathon medal, nothing transformed about me on that day. Like that medal is just a receipt of the transformation that I already put myself through on, you know, like 25 random Tuesday mornings where I had to get up when I didn't want to freaking get up and like go on a run, you know, with my friends or by myself sometimes. And it's like, dude, that's where the transformation happens. And yeah, the transformation happens on the way to the goal. And then when you get to the goal, that is just proof that you transformed. Like that's the utility of the goal. The goal is not going to transform you. The journey towards it is.
Right. Every time you exercise that discipline, like that controlled discipline and the choice to drive yourself a little bit closer to what you want to become, that's how you become the thing that you have always wanted to be.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's transition from the Army a little bit. I mean, what was there a moment where you're like, yeah, I'm sick of this, I want to get out? Or was it just kind of like, yeah, you know, I did what I wanted to do?
When I first got into the Army, my plan all along was to do like one contract and then bounce. I wanted to go to prove to myself that I could do it. And when I got to the end of my 6 years, I felt like I'd proved that to myself. I was like, hey man, like I can do it. And I did it for these past 6 years. And so, yeah, I never had an intent of signing another contract, and I'm stuck to that and bounced.
Okay. I mean, how was family support during this time? Did you like have, you know, do you have a relationship with your parents? Were they supportive?
Yeah, I do have I'm close with both my parents. Yeah, I'm staying with them right now in between military and grad school. And it's funny, at the beginning, when I first told my parents I was going to enlist, because no one saw that coming. Like I was literally on my way to getting a degree in theater.
Yeah.
And so when I told people I was enlisting in special operations, like that blindsided almost everyone who grew up with me, and including my parents. And when I told my mom, she is the daughter of a World War II veteran. My grandfather passed away in 2005, but he was a bona fide World War II veteran. He chased Rommel across Northern Africa, then went up into Italy, and then went all the way up into Germany. And he was there for the whole thing. And then went back for more during the Korean War. But in any case, my mom grew up in a military family. And so when I told her, she was immediately just like, oh, I'm so proud of you. Like my boy is continuing the legacy, like that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was really happy about it. But then when I told my dad grew up very much part of like the 1960s, like anti-war movement.
Gotcha.
He's a Christian minister now, but he was very much part of like hippie culture. And so when I told him that I was going into the military, he was very resistant to that at first.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, why are you going to go? Also nobody, when you're a civilian, you don't know how the military works. And so it's like, if you're going into the military, people think you're holding a gun and going into combat. And so my
Right.
dad was like, why are you going to go die in the Middle East for, politics? And he was pretty resistant to it.
Yeah.
But as I was explaining my reasoning to him, he eventually came around. And my parents were very supportive. They were very supportive while I was in the military. I talked to them, pretty regularly. My parents have always kind of just been like a call away. Yeah, and overall, I think, overall they supported me throughout. I never had any pushback, and I never felt like my parents weren't there for me. In that sense, like I got pretty lucky.
Yeah, just normal parenting concern. That's good.
Yeah.
My parents were they're a little bit of the opposite. They're like, get this guy the fuck out of our house, please. They're like, join the Navy, join the Air Force, do something, So finally was able to get in, and we have a great relationship to this day.
Nice, dude. What?
Yeah,
I know you're the one asking questions here, but I'm curious, what were you studying before you went in?
So I went to Northern Michigan University and I studied sports medicine. I focused in athletic training. So
nice.
Yeah, thank you. My goal was to be a strength and conditioning coach for like a college football team or an NFL team.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I kind of wanted to have like a comprehensive background in injury prevention and rehabilitation and things like that, just to be more valuable. So I ended up doing the full 4 years for athletic training. And in my 4th year, they turned it into a master's program.
Damn.
Yeah. All of the kids that were in, they kind of had to make a choice. They're like, okay, are we going to go to, another 2 years of, school to, I guess, be validated by the rest of the job market? Or are we going to go into physical therapy or chiropractic? And I played around with the different opportunities that were available. And I just realized how much of a kind of a, not a learning curve, but I still had so many classes to do if I wanted to transition careers that it didn't make sense to keep going to school if I didn't have a way to pay for it. So I talked to my parents about joining the National Guard because it was too late for me to do ROTC.
Yeah.
And my dad was like, no, like you need to go active duty. Like it's probably the best thing for you. And you'll always have money. You'll always be employed. You'll always have money, and it'll allow you to pay off your student debt and potentially go to PT school. So that started the process halfway through my senior year of going to the recruiting office, figuring out what OCS was. And then I assessed for the OCS board like the winter after I graduated school. This is all while I was working in a physical therapy office, and they selected me. And then had to wait another 9 months to go to basic training. And this was all during like the COVID timeline. So of course nobody's working, you're getting a freaking stimulus check in the mail every couple weeks. Yeah. And it was cool. But at the same time, you're 22 years old and your parents are kind of tired of seeing your face around the house. They're like, yeah, you need to go do something with your life. I'm like, Dad, I literally raised my right hand the other day. I have to wait to do this. So yeah, it was a long waiting process. And the whole time I was like, am I making the right choice? But joining the military ended up being the best thing I've ever done.
Nice. How long have you been in for now?
I'm coming up on 6 years in August.
Okay. Nice, dude. Nice.
Yeah. So we'll see what the cards have in store. I mean, it's hard to look at something and be like, yeah, 20 years, that's for sure what I want to do for 20 years. Yeah. But, I think it's more common now for people our age to be journeymen, so to speak. Like, let's go do one thing and try it and see if it works out. And then let's go do another thing. And then all of these experiences, they contribute to that unique set of capabilities you might have down the road.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that was good. That was a good question, Luke. You should be my co-host.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm always interested how people kind of ended up in the military themselves and kind of what their end story is. But yeah. So what's up?
Oh, no, you're good. I wanted to add this too. Part of the reason I joined the Army was because I wanted to be on the Army's CrossFit team. And
okay, nice.
Just through like life and things happening, that dream kind of like took a took a sideline and, not even the direction that I ended up wanting to go in. So it's just funny how life works out.
Yeah.
Let's see. So as far as the endurance space goes, was this something that you picked up because of your time in the military, or was this something where you're like, I'm never gonna run again, like fuck PT, like, or did you just like, yeah, I kind of want to do something hard again?
Yeah, that's a great question, and is a little bit of a story unto itself.
Mm-hmm.
In 2022, I had been in training pipelines for 2.5 years. When I finished that pipeline, I was a little burnt out and had right when I got out of right when I graduated, I had a rupture and a very close friendship of mine that in retrospect was completely my fault. And I felt that way. I even felt that way at the time. And so I had the burnout of the training pipeline, a very destabilizing event and a really close relationship of mine. And then I was in E4 at the time. And so I was living in barracks, which for anybody who's never been inside of a barracks, it's basically like a college dormitory, but built by the government in like the 1970s. So awful.
Yeah.
And then the barracks that I was living in did not have separate bedrooms. I was sharing one room with another dude who was in like his early 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And the barracks had a mold infestation and did eventually, actually, those barracks ended up getting condemned and torn down. And I got to live in them right before that happened. Yay. But
you're going to get the mesothelioma.
Yeah, exactly. So my mental health was not in a great place.
Mm-hmm.
And then because it takes time after you graduate for the Army to administratively process you into your first unit, I ended up having 10 weeks of free time where it was literally wake up, send my up text, basically text the people in my chain of command that I didn't die overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Then the rest of the day was white space, which like summer vacation when you're a kid is cool for like 4 days.
Right.
And then by day 5, you're going kind of stir crazy.
Yeah.
So I was basically trapped in this mold box dealing with fighting a pretty intense mental health battle and didn't really feel like I had anybody who I could turn to. And I had this sense that basically my days were turning into me just like sitting at my desk, just kind of wallowing. And I was like, dude, I'm getting my ass kicked by essentially like my circumstances right now. And I was like, I don't know if I'm strong enough to like make it through this. Not that I never really, it's not that I was suicidal. That wasn't the point, but it was mostly just that I was hopeless. And so I was like, okay, man, like, what are you going to do, dude? I was like, if I am going to beat this thing, I have to give myself evidence that I'm stronger than I think I am, because right now I'm getting my ass handed to me. And so I was like, okay, well, what's the hardest thing I could think of doing? And so I kind of was browsing in my head and I was like, I could try to do like the 1,000-pound club. And then I was like, no, I don't really want to do that.
Nah.
Yeah, nah, that ain't me. I was like, nah, that ain't me. And, maybe I could run like a marathon. And I was like, no, dude, everybody I know is like run a marathon. And then I was like, oh, you know what I could do that I don't know anybody who's ever done this before is I could run an ultra marathon. I was like, and that would be freaking insane, because I didn't know anybody who had ever done it. The farthest I had run at that time, I ran a half marathon in college, but it had been a few years. So I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's try to do it. And so I went out the next day, bought a pair of running shoes, I couldn't find an ultramarathon training plan because ultramarathons are blowing up right now and they've gotten a lot more popular over the last few years.
Yeah.
And so at the time, like, there weren't really any training resources. And so I found a marathon training plan on Google Images. And I was like, all right, like, this looks doable.
Solid.
And so I printed off a Google Images marathon training plan and went on my first run the next day. And I trained up to a half marathon on that plan. Then I tore my meniscus, not running. I was actually lifting. And that set me back 6 months. And then I had to get surgery. And then the rehab was 6 months. So it came back 12 months later. But even working up to that half marathon, I had this sense that I was like, this plan is working right now. Like,
Right.
the pit that I am trying to drag myself out of, I can feel myself coming out of it. And it's like my meniscus kind of kicked me back down to the bottom, but I was like, I know I can freaking do this. And so when I recovered from my meniscal surgery, I started back over from day one of that training plan. And my best friend asked me, he's like, hey, are you still trying to run that ultra? He's like, I'll do it with you. I was like, okay. I kind of didn't think he was going to be serious about it, but then he started showing up to all the runs and I was like, God damn, okay. I was like, we're rolling too deep.
There you go.
And we did, we trained up for a 55-kilometer ultramarathon, so 34 miles. And in February of 2024, we ran that together in Moab, Utah. And mostly my thought when I finished was that was the worst thing I've ever done. And I'm never going to run that far again. I was like, that was like one of the stupidest ideas I've ever had, even though I did feel really accomplished. And I did have like a huge cathartic moment at the finish line where I was like, oh, hell yeah, dude, I did it. I did what I said I was going to do. And, and I became the person that I wanted to be, but I was like, nah, I'm never going to do this again. And then, you know how those things go. It was like 1 year later, I hadn't done much running. And I was like, dude, I kind of want to run another ultra. And so then I got back into the space. I hired a coach so that I could actually figure out what I was doing. And last year I ran another 50K and then I ran a 50 miler in November.
Nice.
Yeah. So I've got 3 ultras under my belt now and I'm registered for my first 100 miler this fall. So we're training up for the big hundo. Come on.
There you go. We're building the hype for it. How far was that first ultra that you did?
The first one I did was 34 miles.
Okay.
And it was mostly trail running in Utah. Do you do trail running or are you mostly a road guy?
Mostly road, just by,
Where you're at.
Not necessity, but like where I'm at. But I love trail running. I think it's probably my favorite way to run, truthfully. I mean, I've been out to kind of like that Southern Pines area where it's like all sandy trails and stuff. And it's that's actually fun for me because, it's never the same area. You're not doing like a loop around your neighborhood. So it's a lot easier to run on trails mentally from what I've found.
100%, dude.
Yeah. You're like, oh, it's a different looking tree. That's pretty cool.
yeah. But without like getting off on a big thing about trail running, 100%. Because I tell people all the time, like trail running is like full body. It's like a full body sport because you're having to constantly calibrate your balance and you're constantly having to look for like, you're having to look down at your path to figure out where you want to go. So it demands a much higher level of presence than doing like zone 2 through your neighborhood, which is what I'm having to do right now as well.
Yeah.
While I'm here in Louisiana. But first race was 34 miles. And then when I came back a year later, I was like, I want to do a higher distance PR. So I signed up for a 50 miler, ran a 50K on my way to doing that 50 miler. And and then when I ran the 50 miler, same thing. I was like, I know I can go farther than this. And so this year is the 100 miler year. So that's what I'm working towards this fall.
You're going to crush that shit, man.
Yeah, thanks, dude.
You recently just took it top 10 in your last race, correct?
Yeah, I did. 2 weeks ago, I did a last man standing race, which for those who don't know how those work, there's basically a distance, like a there and back distance that you run as a lap. And the race I did was kind of unique in the way it was set up because typically how it works is you have a certain amount of time to run that lap and then you just keep running that lap as many times as you can until there's only one person left. So it really is just like sheer endurance. And typical last man standings they regularly last over 24 hours. And I think the longest ones can last like over 3 days, something truly just like bonkers. This one was a little different because after a certain number of laps, they would reduce the amount of time that you have to complete a lap. So you had to run faster and faster. as the race went on.
Man.
And it was in New Orleans over a bridge that was basically like hill shaped. And so you had 60 feet of elevation gain with each lap, which doesn't sound like a lot, but if
That's a
you
lot.
imagine doing like 6 flights of stairs,
Yeah.
like every, I don't know, maybe like 8 minutes, it's like, it's not going to take that many minutes before your legs really start to, before your legs like really start to feel the burn.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I went out and did that. I think I thought it was in the 50s that people like was the number of competitors, but it ended up being higher. It was somewhere in the 80s. And I I did 34 laps for, which came out to about 24 miles because the
Okay.
laps were a little less than a mile. So I did 24 miles and I came in ninth. Yeah, I came in ninth place at that race, which was huge for me because even though I've been in the ultra running scene for a little while now, I have never come top 10 in anything athletic ever in my life. And so that was a big, like Rocky, like fist in the air moment where I was like, where I was just like, damn, this was a long time coming. This was a long time coming.
I bet you cried
so, yeah,
too.
It was a pretty,
I bet it was beautiful.
Dude. Yeah, dude. I was a little misty eyed. And yeah, when I came across the finish line, at the end, I was, a little misty eyed. They gave me a t-shirt, like a top 10 t-shirt, and I freaking grabbed that and was like holding it up in the air. I sent a video to my coach, and I was telling her like, thanks so much. I couldn't have done this without you. Like, you're such a wreck. You're such a wreck after that distance, like just physically and emotionally.
Yeah.
That, I was a little messy at the end, but dude, that's how it is. And it was an accomplishment I'm really proud of. So yeah.
That's sick, man. So what was the pacing strategy like? How much time did you get for every lap?
So the way this one worked was that the lap was 0.7 miles and you started with having 8 minutes to run that distance, which came out to roughly an 11:30 pace. So that was pretty doable for most people. They basically just tried to run as slow as possible because to come into your territory, sports science, I didn't want to start burning through all of my glycogen, which is a much more, for those people who have no idea what that means.
Makes your muscles work.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you basically have two kinds of fuel. Your glycogen, you don't have that much of relatively, and your fat, you have a ton of. Right. And so I was like, well, I want to run slow so that I can just kind of stay in an aerobic effort here. And then after 10 laps, they shortened it by a minute. So the pace came down 45 seconds. So what is that? We started at 11:30. So it came down to 10:45. After 10 more laps, it came down to 10 minutes. And then they started doing it every 5 laps. So then it went down to 9:15 and then 8:30. And by the time we got to 8:30, I was hurting pretty bad.
Yeah.
And then they dropped it again to 7:45. And dude, I run a ton, obviously, but I am not cranking out miles that are really much faster than like 8 minutes, 8-minute miles, because that's just not the ultra running game. Like the ultra running game is like slow pace for a really, 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 really long time. So once we got down below 8 minutes per mile, I was hurting pretty badly. And again, I was looking around and there was about 15 people left. And I was like, fuck, dude. I was like, if there was more than 15, I could have quit and just been like, oh, that was like a fun time. And if there was less than 15 and I was already in the top 10, then I would have been like, oh, hell yeah, I did it. I reached my goal. But because I was right there on the brink, I was like, fuck. I was like, I can't give up now. Like I'm so close to being top 10. So I cranked out a couple more miles at a 7:45 pace, which when you've done 2,000 feet of elevation gain over like 20 plus miles, like I know 7:45 doesn't sound that fast to some people, but it's like, dude, that is freaking cooking after you've been putting in that much effort for that long. So I did a couple more miles at 7:45 and, the whole time I was fueling strategy kind of starts to get into the weeds of the running world. Yeah. But yeah, I had to kind of like my fueling throughout, but finished 34 laps, 24 miles. And I think it was somewhere like 4.5 hours ish was the whole race.
Gotcha. What do you think your biggest challenge has been as you've trained for these races, like, or even competed? Is there something that you struggle with the most, or is it just kind of like every training session, every run is different?
I'd say the thing I struggle with the most, and this is a wild answer because it's just insane that it's the thing I struggled with the most at the beginning. And here I am years later now with 3 ultras under my belt, and it's still the hardest thing. And I really do not mean this as a joke, is getting out of bed in the morning. It's
There you
like,
go.
dude, that is the hardest part
Yeah.
because it's like, the effort that you have to put in. Your mind starts playing all of these games with you of like,
Yeah.
oh, like you can run later today. Like you don't have to run right now. Like what if you got up and just enjoyed your morning? Like,
Yeah.
oh man, like you really earned it. Like you can, just do it later in the day. Like I know
Yeah.
we were talking earlier about how, you've got a kid. And so balancing that with training can be difficult. And yeah, dude. And it's just these little tricks that your mind plays on you to try to get out of the pain that you have to pay to get the goal that you want. And that continues to be the hardest thing for me. Like this morning I had to do a 2-hour run and I knew I had to put it in before we spoke this morning. So I was like, I'm just going to have to run at 7. And yeah, and I just didn't want to do it. But it's like, I think people think that there's some kind of a trick to doing hard things, especially physically hard things, where it's like, oh, there's some kind of hack or, there's some kind of, like mental trick that I don't know that if I just knew it, then I could get out the door. And it's like, dude, the mental trick is brute force. It is just getting up and doing the thing you don't want to do because you want the goal more than you want to stay where you're at. And that's an easy thing to like say on a podcast. It's a lot harder when you're doing it in the moment, but it's like, that's what it is, man. It's just getting up and like getting out the door. Starting is always the hardest part in my experience. Starting's always the hardest part.
Yeah, I can fully empathize with that. How old are you, Luke?
31. I just turned 31.
31. Okay. So I'm 28, you're 31. Like we're at the point now where we kind of have to listen to how our bodies feel sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
And like there are days where like today where my son, he woke up every hour on the hour and was like, Dad, fuck you. Like you ain't sleeping. And like you kind of have to listen to your body because you feel like we're just in a 8-round boxing match or whatever.
Yeah.
But like there are so many other days in between where it's you lying to yourself and you're like, oh, like I'm not recovered enough. I'm not optimized.
Yes,
like, and you're never going to have that perfect scenario where you feel amazing. And when you do, it's like, it's very few and far between. So if you can just get comfortable with showing up consistently, like doing the thing that you said you were going to do because you said you were going to do it, that's how you really see results. Like, especially with running, the thing that I noticed the most, like zone 2, I've never really enjoyed zone 2. I enjoy it a lot now, but that's because I started applying myself and was very patient with the process. Like eventually you start to see that progress, and it's by virtue of showing up and just doing it. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Yeah. For anybody, I used to listen to podcasts like this and, wonder how guys were constantly getting out there to, work towards these big fitness goals. And I can tell you the number one thing that has helped me the most with my running is running with other people. I trained up for my 55K with a close friend of mine. I trained up for my 50K with other people and for my 50 miler. So actually all 3 of my ultras I've trained with friends of mine. And for the 50K and 50 miler, I was also coaching those friends while we were doing it. And the thing about training with other people is like, it's so easy to let yourself off the hook because like we said, you can always come up with some justification for why you don't really have to put in the work that you said you were going to put in today. But when you have a friend who is going to be sitting in a parking lot at 6 a.m., like ready to run, you're not going to leave that friend hanging. Maybe you are if you're just like a giant piece of shit. But it's like, generally speaking, it's like when the risk of disappointing someone else, in my experience, is so much more potent than the risk of disappointing yourself because you're because you can mind game your way out of disappointing yourself, or at least your appetite for it is much bigger. But it's like, dude,
Mhm.
disappointing someone else who's relying on you to show up and like run those miles next to them is a much more potent piece of motivation in my experience. It's actually something I'm struggling with right now because living at home with my parents in Louisiana, I don't have anybody to run with right now. And mentally, it's been much, much harder to run than when I had a friend who I knew was going to, be sitting there waiting in the parking lot for me.
Yeah, I had a 12 miler the other day, and one of my previous soldiers from my very first platoon, he actually showed up and was like, "Let's do this thing." And we were running at one point, and it's like a 2.5 mile loop, but I think we got to like mile 5, and we just kind of started looking at each other like, "Who's going to slow down first?" Because it was supposed to be an easy run, and I'm like, man, I don't want to slow down. I don't want to let him down. And I think he was thinking the same exact thing. So we're just running there in silence, like going entirely too fast. But it helps so much when you have somebody to be your accountability partner. So I definitely agree with you on that. This is more of a nuanced question. We'll kind of we'll transport away from running. I want to talk about your personal brand because
interesting. Okay, I'd be fascinated to hear what you make of it because I'm just kind of over here beep bopping on Instagram. But yeah, go for it.
I just think you have such a unique. Your overall persona is so unique because I feel like in today's political climate or social climate or whatever the hell is going on right now, it's either there's one extreme or there's another extreme.
Mm-hmm.
But you are somebody who grew up with a certain set of characteristics, certain background. You went through experiences that kind of make you a blend of everything, right?
Definitely.
And I know that you mentioned you were gay in high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about that. I don't want to get hung up on it, but I kind of want to learn more about your personal brand and like how those experiences have shaped what you try to put out and try to help other people with.
Dude, that's such a great question. And that's also fascinating to hear someone seeing that from the outside as well.
Sure.
Yeah. So I grew up in a very religious and conservative community. It's definitely what people would consider like Trump country now. But I went to school at an acting program in Minneapolis, which is like, I don't know how you get like more on opposite ends of the spectrum. And so growing up, the quote unquote like village that raised me was very politically and just culturally conservative. But the people who I loved at home were, I guess, on one side of that spectrum. But then when I went to school and made all of the close friends that you make in college, they were, obviously very liberal and on the other side. And I think it served me in two ways, which is that number one, I've never had the luxury of like an information bubble, because I think lots of people grow up in a certain kind of community and then they find their friends in that community. And so we can kind of get, we're insulated in a certain kind of way of seeing the world. And it's easy just to look at other people and be like, well, they're wrong about that, because you don't have a whole lot of exposure to why those people think that way.
Yeah.
But when I was going to school, I was with extremely liberal people who I loved dearly, and I was able to appreciate their experiences. But then when I was coming home for the holidays, I was with my family, who's extremely conservative, and I love them too. And so it has made me very suspicious of certainty, because I have seen the best of two competing ways of seeing the world. And so when someone claims to be certain about them being right and somebody else being wrong, I am automatically like very suspicious of that. And I think that's made it very easy, not easy, but it's made it much easier for me to have a genuine curiosity about people and where they're coming from. And it's made it easier for me to make friendships in my adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second way that it's served me as far as my Instagram goes is that so much I mean, there is almost nothing in contemporary American life now that is not politicized or on its way to being politicized. And everything is like you have to choose. Not only do you have to choose one side or the other, but there's tremendous pressure, I think, especially on younger people to make it clear which side they're on social media. And it's created this space where we can never get away from partisan conflict at any level of our lives, whether that
Right.
is on like the grandest national scale or talking to your friend about like the Super Bowl halftime show.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is just wild to me. And so something that I have valued, which I don't think I would have had I not grown up the way that I did with my experience on both sides of the political spectrum, is that there is there's so much joy to be taken in people and in relationships aside from people's politics. And I think we need places in our lives where we can talk about politics and talk about the political things that matter to us. And we also need places in our lives that are not politicized. And so something that I have tried to do with my Instagram page, it's not very explicit, but it's just a kind of silent commitment I made to myself, is
Mhm.
that this page is going to be like my account is going to be about running and other endurance challenges that I take on. It's going to be about, to some degree, self improvement. But something else I always wanted to be is somewhere where people can come to get away from the hyper polarization that has infiltrated like every other area of our lives.
Gotcha.
And I don't think that's the same thing as being like apolitical. I'm trying to like intentionally give people a space where we can appreciate things about each other that are shielded from the forces at work literally everywhere in society that are always trying to get us to choose sides.
I love that answer. I don't really know what the specific moment was for me, but I mean it was probably within the last year I just started questioning my reality very heavily, and it was like I'm not going to name any specific political events or anything like that, but I just started asking why. I was like, why do I feel this way about this thing, and why have I not looked into it more? Like, because one of the best quotes I've ever heard was two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
Two things can be true at the same
Often they
time.
are.
Like,
yeah.
right. And like, hey, I can be a part of this community, but I can still be, a strong masculine male who has strong values, who believes that, we should do good onto others. Right. Like, I think that, the point you made about having spaces to come together and kind of question things healthily and be able to talk about things healthily is super important, because I think a lot of what we see on a daily basis is heavily curated, and these algorithms, they just push one side or the other side. They don't push a whole lot of the in between. And what I've seen from people, within our age group lately is like, hey, let's talk about the in between. Like, why isn't anybody talking about the in between? How can we be better about that? How can we better serve the people around us by talking about the in between and trying to make an impact there?
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of that. Yeah. I resonate with a lot of that. And I just think, I think we've all probably had times in our lives where it's like, where we just kind of need to unplug. Where it's like, dude, I've got to turn off the freaking news. I've got to like take my freaking headphone out. Like, I can't listen to another freaking podcast right now. Like, there's just there's just times where we got to unplug and kind of get back to the quote unquote like things that matter, whatever that means to you. Going back to this question about like my personal brand as that is emerging and I'm, trying to shape it in different ways, is when we get to one of those moments where we have to take the headphone out and get back to the things that matter. I would love for people to think of this. I would love for people to be able to come to the spaces that I've created and feel like that's somewhere where they can come, where they're not going to have to pass some kind of weird purity test at the door based on their opinions about whatever like the latest news event is. Like, you can come there and you can be with other people you can be with other people in a space where we can appreciate things about each other and things that like we're doing together that are just they're just outside of the realm of politics. Like politics does not have to touch everything. There's a lot of things that it should touch, and that's
Yeah.
fine. That's
Yeah.
fine. But it does not have to touch everything. And in a world where it is touching more and more and more and more and more and more and more, I am trying to create like one little patch of the internet where it's like, yo, if you are just trying to come to be a better person and like appreciate the people you're with, like come to my Instagram page. And then whatever that grows into, you know, hopefully make that patch a little bit bigger.
That's a great hook for a video, man. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay here.
Yeah, I guess I should. Yeah, I'm not really thinking that. I need to get used to thinking that way about content. But yeah, no, you're right.
Don't
That's
do
a
it
good
too
idea.
much though, because it's not good for you. Like I get spun up on things. My wife's like, "Bro, like stop thinking of content ideas. It's literally 8:30 at night. Like go to bed."
Yeah, exactly.
So don't go down the unhealthy path. Just do it because it's fun.
Yeah.
Was there a moment for you in your life where you're like, okay, I'm really done devoting a majority of my energy to think, like caring about what people think? Like, is that what kind of prompted the page build, I guess?
I wish I could say there was a moment where I decided I was going to stop caring what people think, but I'm afraid I've not reached that. I haven't reached that point yet.
Everyone
Yeah.
struggles with that. Like, I mean, nobody doesn't give a fuck 100% of the time, but
Yeah.
you seem to be somebody that is very, very much a, I don't want to say stoic, but stoic is probably the right word. You seem like a stronghold. Like
That's fascinating to hear, and I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. It's just something, I don't know what it is. It's something that stands out to me, but you seem like a stronghold that you're very kind. You're very open to other people's feedback, but it doesn't bother you per se.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does help me understand the question. And I'm trying to think if there was a time like that where I really had a moment. And, you know, like no moment comes to mind, you know, where I had like an epiphany. I think, you know, it's funny because I grew up going to like Christian schools,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as a gay kid, which was difficult in some ways. And then I went off to acting school in Minnesota, which was like a totally different crowd. You know, and then I went into the military and into special operations. And I think in some ways, I've proven to myself that, well, here, I can put it this way to you. Lots of people, you know, go into the military because, you know, they want to change something about themselves, or it's a total cliche that it's like, oh yeah, like they went into the military and they changed.
Right.
And I was interested when I went into the military. I was like, oh man, like I wonder how I'm going to change. Like if I put myself through like the military, you know, the big military machine, like this is how I look on this side, but I'm like, well, how am I going to look when it spits me out on the other side? Like I'm going to be a totally different person. Yeah, exactly, dude. And honestly, if I'm being totally honest, I think there was part of me that thought like, oh, this is how I'm going to become a bro. And it's like, this is how I'm going to become like those guys who like never included me, like when I was growing up, by going and doing something like super hardcore and super macho and super like testosterone out. And so I went into the military and I did 6 years. And what I realized was that the Army did not change me, in that like it didn't change me into someone else. I didn't come out the other side of the Army machine a different person. Pressure of my experience in the military really just solidified who I already kind of understood myself to be.
Gotcha.
And so I've come out the other side of that, realizing that I came out on the other side of it kind of cured of my fantasy that there's some world in which I'm transformed into the people who I envy for different reasons.
Sure.
Where it's just like, no, dude, it's like, you're not going to get dealt a new hand. Like you got dealt the hand that you got dealt. It's like, you're the way that you are, you know, like personality wise. Like there was a time in my life, unsurprisingly, maybe where it's like, I wished that I wasn't gay. And that was something that I had to deal with. But it's like, dude, those are the cards you're dealt, dude. And it's like, you're not getting dealt new ones. And so it's like the quicker that you can, it's not make peace with the cards. I think that's part of it, is like making peace with it. But what I've learned to do over the years is just own it, where it's not just like, yeah, these are the cards I'm dealt and I've accepted that. It's like, yeah, dude, like this is who I am. And like, you know, what am I going to do, like be sad about it or like try to be somebody else, it's like that
Hmm.
is a great way to waste your time. Like that is a great way to
Yeah.
waste your time. And so
Yeah.
it's like, no, dude, like these are the cards that I have. And I think I probably have a confidence in myself now and a confidence in my ability to love other people, especially across the political spectrum, which has become such a divisive force,
Hmm.
you know, in, in kind of like in our contemporary, society, I guess. And so it's like, I just try to bring my full self to bear, and I just try to like love people, man. And
Gotcha.
I think that resonates. I think that resonates with a lot of people. So that was a little bit of a winding answer to your question, but
No, it's fine, and I like it because you mentioned, at some point you were kind of hoping that maybe these crucibles would kind of transform you into somebody else, but it's like, no, it makes you a better version of what you already are by
mhm.
virtue of doing the hard things. And I think a lot of young people, including myself, we try to fit into these different rooms where it's like, whether it's being a college football player or going and trying to be a Green Beret or going and trying to be like a frat boy or whatever it is, there's a room you're trying to fit into when in reality, you can build the room that you want to be in. And that's what you're
Yeah,
doing right
I
now.
dude, 100%. Can I make one more comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
No, not allowed.
This no, because this is just like this is super nerdy, and we're gonna go deep into my journalism days with this one, but it
Okay.
is pretty foundational to I think how I conceive of all this, and maybe you'll find it interesting, maybe not. But it's this idea of nouns and verbs, and this is what I mean by that. I think, especially when we're growing up and in our 20s, we have these ideas of the different nouns that I want to be. It's this idea of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like, well, I want to be,
Hmm.
an athlete, or I want to be an actor, or I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a soldier. And those are kind of the more explicit things. But then we also have the implicit things like you were talking about. Like for me, I was like, I want to be a bro because I never got to be that, and I've never
Hmm.
been that, and I've never been included in that way. Or, I want to be, yeah, like, or somebody being like, I want to be, special operations, or I want to be like popular, something like that. But the thing here is what is difficult about wanting to be a noun, about like investing your identity in a noun, is that if if I say that I want to be an athlete, it's hard to know what exactly that means. The idea of an athlete is an ideal, and it's like you're always going to fall short of that somehow. And also, you might be an athlete, but you're a lot more than that as well. Like,
Hmm.
I'm not just a runner, there's a lot of other identities that I have to fulfill as well. And so it becomes this standard that I constantly feel like I'm falling short of. Whereas verbs are just things that you do. So instead of me being like, man, I'm a runner, I wish I was a better runner, I wish I was a better runner. It's like, no, I'm Luke and I run. And I have control over the things that I do, but my identity isn't wrapped up in those things. It's like, dude, you are always going to be Chase. Like, you don't get to be anybody else, and you get to decide like what you're going to make of that. But
Hmm.
when we get wrapped up in these things, these identities of like, well, I want to be a different identity. It's like, dude, stop stressing about wanting to be a different identity. Start focusing on verbs, because guess what? Like that noun isn't going to get you anywhere. Like wanting to be an athlete isn't going to get you anywhere. You know what is going to get you somewhere? Like putting on your running shoes and like getting out the door, like, writing that resume and submitting it to the place that you want to like submit it to, taking the actual actions that are going to move you toward the life that you want to have. And something that people tell me a lot, not a lot, but something that I hear from people is kind of what you were saying. They're like, oh, you're really interesting or hard to categorize, or like you're kind of a peculiar person in that way. And I think what people are picking up on there is that I decided a long time ago in college that I am not trying to be anybody other than myself. I don't really care who I become. What I
Hmm.
care about are the things that I'm doing. And it's like, I'm going on this run, or I'm enlisting, and I'm doing all those things as Luke Diamond because that's the only person I can be anyway. So a little bit of
Gotcha.
a nerd rant there, but
You're good. Let's focus on that moment, because that's kind of what I was getting at. Was like you said, in college you started coming to the realization that you're going to do the things that you want to do because it's what you want to do.
mm-hmm.
Was there any context around that, or did you just come to that realization through virtue of kind of being on your own?
I think it was when if I had to pinpoint a moment, it would probably be when I left the theater world to go into journalism.
Mm-hmm.
Because, we all know what you're supposed to do in college, which is that you're supposed to show up, declare a major,
Mm-hmm.
go into whatever job like comes out of that major, and then you just, and that becomes like your lane. And I, for better or worse, have just never stayed in a lane very long. And it kind of makes it, sometimes it's hard for people to make sense of me. Like if you look at my resume, you're like, special operations. Well, that's cool. What was he doing before that? Like journalism. What the fuck? And then you're like, what was he doing before that? And it's like, theater? Who is this guy? Yeah, exactly. Like, who is this dude? But it's because I have always done the thing that I feel like I need to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever lane that puts me in is kind of immaterial to me.
Right.
I started in the acting lane. I felt like I needed to tell stories that mattered more. So I went into journalism.
Mm-hmm.
Then I felt like I needed to live a better story. And that looked like going on a big adventure. And so that put me in the military. And now what I'm trying to do is give back. I'm trying to give back the experiences that helped me in the military, which is ultra running. And so now I'm in the ultra running space. And so I think it was those early decisions to do what I needed to do for myself, regardless of what lane it put me in, as opposed to being like, oh, well, I can't change majors because you're not supposed to do that. And it's like that I just wasn't interested in that kind of a lifestyle.
Gotcha. So when it comes to being gay, did you always know, or was this something that you had, like, did you have a coming out moment? Like how did that go down for you?
Yeah. So I have memories that go back all the way to, early grade school, where I can remember just noticing boys in ways where it's like, oh yeah, you were definitely gay. that goes back all the way. So, yeah, basically as long as I can remember. But I grew up in a really religious community where that was a problem. And so when I was a teenager, I went through I spent a long time kind of dreading the realization that this is how I was, and then asking God to take that away, because I realized how big of a problem it was going to be. When I entered high school and started going to my arts high school in New Orleans, which I was going to school in a private school in a very small community that was a very homogenous student body. And then when I moved to the arts high school in New Orleans, it had a very diverse community in every sense of the word. Right. And instead of feeling like I didn't fit in because I wasn't like everybody else, I was like, there's room for all kinds of people here. And maybe there could be room for me. And so it was in high school that I told my parents. It was tricky. I don't have a very clean coming out story, because this is probably maybe like a TMI thing to share like on a podcast. But my parents knew that parents knew into guys, because as a kid you like don't know how to delete your internet history. and so it's like they could like they put those pieces together early on. But our kind of agreement about it was that it wasn't a sin to have those feelings, but it was a sin to act on them. And when I came out to my parents, it wasn't me telling them like, mom and dad, like I like boys. It was me telling them like, hey, those feelings I've had that I've basically lived in denial of. I was like, I want to start, like, I just kind of want to live in alignment with those feelings, because like those are the feelings that I have.
I got you.
And it went terribly.
Okay.
I had a very peaceful home life, and in lots of ways a really ideal home life growing up. I've told people it was like tossing a grenade into like the middle of our living room. It kind of obliterated our family for a little while. My parents were convinced that I had lost my way spiritually and that I was giving into temptation. And we had some very difficult and very loud arguments about
Hmm.
it over the months afterwards. And yeah, we eventually realized that I wasn't going to change my parents' mind and they weren't going to change my mind. And so we all just kind of decided to sweep it under the rug. And the easiest way to deal with it was by not dealing with it at all. And I had to commute an hour to high school every day. And so that really worked out well for me because I kind of started to have two different lives where, like, at home, I was like closeted, like Christian church boy. And then when I was going to high school, I could like be out like with my friends. And then, yeah, when I moved to college, I was like just living as an out gay person. And my parents were kind of vaguely aware, but it was just something that we never talked about.
Hmm.
And over the years, to kind of to sum it all up, over the years, my parents have come to a place where if I'm single right now, but have had boyfriends in the past, and they've come to a place where they can recognize that I really do love these people and they can love them too as somebody who's like meaningful to me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like my parents do, like they still believe that like marriage is a sacred institution between like a man and a woman. And again, it's like they have those beliefs and I don't think they think that I'm making like the best decisions with my life. But it's like ultimately when you become an adult, it's like you have to make decisions for yourself. And and the decisions that I've made for myself is that I think things work out for the best when you tell the truth. And like that's the truth. And I have a lot of people in my life who I love very dearly who gravely disagree with how I'm living my life. And that's, you know what, there's room for disagreement in loving relationships. And I've managed to like
Oh, yeah.
maintain those loving relationships with my parents and with those different people I grew up with. And yeah, that's how I've played my cards.
Well, I'm really happy that it's worked out for you, and obviously that's a thing that you'll probably have to continue to work on throughout your entire life. Obviously, relationships are things that require work. It's not just show up and you love everybody all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm happy that it seems to have worked out for you. And as a parent myself, like I think the important thing to remember is as long as you've raised a good person, that's ultimately what matters, because they are going to be who impacts the world after you're gone. Like from what I can tell, I think you're a pretty good dude, man. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that's the impression I give off.
Yeah, of course. You're like, yeah, it's a secret. I'm not a good person.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of my liberal friends, which I have plenty of them, they take this attitude that it's, where it's like if you're gay and somebody's not okay with that, basically that's because they're bigoted or because they're a bad person or because they're closed-minded or because because they're like a Neanderthal and like haven't gotten with contemporary society. And a lot of that is because my friends are also protective of me and I appreciate that, but I just have not seen it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, I hope this isn't like a clip that eventually gets played, later in my career and like held against me, but I obviously disagree with people. I disagree with the opinion that two men in my case or two people of the same sex like can't love each other and have a meaningful, healthy relationship. I have lived something to the contrary to that, I feel like. But at the same time, I do respect that like people's religious beliefs are part of their identity. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like you can't just walk up to someone and you can't tell someone just to change their religious beliefs because it conflicts with like the way that you want to live your life. That's very difficult. It's a very, very, very difficult ask. And even though I have suffered much at the hands of people who could not make room for the way that I was living my life in the way they see the world because of their religious beliefs, I do have a respect for how they see the world.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are ways to have loving relationships with those people where that disagreement doesn't become like the defining conflict of the relationship. And it's like, you know what, man, at the end of the day, like people are complicated. It's like people are freaking complicated. And like you're not going to
Right.
agree with everybody on everything. And so I feel like I have found a way to have loving relationships with people who I disagree with on something that fundamental. And honestly, dude, I'm really proud of that because like it's not easy, but it's like my parents have put the work in and I've put the work in. We don't see those things the same way, but we just have decided we're going to love each other around that disagreement. And both those things two things can be true at the same time, like you said.
Absolutely. And the last point I'll make on it.
Yeah.
I think the place where a lot of people go wrong when it comes to these types of situations is they refuse to seek understanding. Like that is the easiest way to make an enemy your friend, is to seek to understand them. Because at the end of the day, everybody's going to tell you, you don't know what it's like. You don't know what it's like. You don't know what my life is like. You don't know what I've been through. But if you can just sit down, put your pride aside and just say, you're right, I don't understand anything. Tell me about what it's like to be you. That's where progress is made. And that's why, I appreciate you coming on the show, because it gives us an opportunity to have these conversations and not be like, oh, that's not who I am. That's very against my belief system. And it's like, you got to be able to talk to people. You're going to limit yourself so much in life if you never seek to understand what they're going through as a human. So
yeah. I agree with a lot of that. I have more thoughts, but I'll end up kind of just pontificating the whole day away. So
you're getting, not to caveat off Sergeant Major, but we're coming up on about an hour 42. So I think we're at a place now where we can probably ask some Q&A and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there anything else you wanna share with the homies while we're here?
Anything else I want to share with the homies?
Yeah.
No, man. I mean, if I could leave people with anything, it's just it's like, you want to go on an adventure, dude? Find the biggest dragon that you could possibly try to slay and see what happens if you put an earnest effort behind actually trying to go do it. It's like, absolutely. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. That's why it's an adventure. But it's like everything worthwhile that has come out of my life post, I don't know, like 18 years old has been because I thought of the hardest possible thing I could go do. I failed. It's like I failed SFAS. I'm a freaking SFAS wash. And it's like you fail along the way. It's like, but the place that you end up, you're going to end up there because like you tried your best. And it's like, I don't know how you can end up anywhere better than that. And so that's the message I'd leave people with, man.
That's awesome, dude. Well, let's do the Q&A real quick.
Is this like a lightning round?
I mean, it can be. They can be longer answers if you want.
Okay.
So very, very first question. This is a deep philosophical question I ask everybody. Okay, sweet. What's your favorite color?
Green, definitely.
Okay, green. All right. 2 for 2 on green. I like that.
Okay, nice.
All right. Favorite movie?
Easy, Lord of the Rings trilogy, and of those 3, the first one, Fellowship of the Ring. Like, not even close, no contest. Everything that I've talked about storytelling this entire conversation started because when I was a kid, I loved Lord of the Rings. So easy peasy, Lord of the Rings.
It's a very goated trilogy. I don't think people...
Are you kidding, dude? Absolutely.
Underappreciated. It took 12 years to make those movies. I love those movies too.
I can't sign off on the Hobbit trilogy that came out afterwards. Nah. And I don't even watch Rings of Power. Rings of Power to me just is not part of the Lord of the Rings universe as far as I'm concerned. But dude, that OG trilogy, the Peter Jackson trilogy, come on, dude. Come on. Yeah. So definitely Lord of the Rings.
I love that. Okay, so let's make these a little bit more tailored to you. If you had to pick one running shoe to either compete or run in for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Dang. Okay. I'm going to go with the shoe. Okay. Hell yeah, dude. I'm going to go with the shoe I ran my 50 miler in, which is the Nike Pegasus Trails. And the reason I love that one, I also feel like I also just identify with this as a person, is that it's a hybrid shoe. And so it is a trail running shoe on the tread. And so you get really good grip when you're running on the trails, but the structure of it, I'm trying not to get too much into like running shoe anatomy. It's basically shaped like a street running shoe. So you get the speed and the roll of a street running shoe, but
Okay.
with the tread of a trail running shoe. And that's what I knocked out my 50 miler in. It's like the most comfortable shoe I've ever worn. I wore it for 50 straight miles in
Nice.
November or December rather. And yeah, killer shoe. Adidas, or not Adidas, Nike Pegasus Trail. Final answer.
Nike Pegasus. I'm going to have to look those up. I love shoes.
Yeah.
Okay. If you were in theater, what was your favorite? I'm assuming play. Did you ever do any plays?
Yeah, that was all I did.
Okay. Favorite play that you were a part of could be throughout any time period of your life.
I guarantee this is the only time this will probably ever be talked about on your podcast. But there is I got to perform at Shakespeare's Globe in London, which for people who don't know, that's like Shakespeare's original theater. It's a very famous theater. And so the opportunity to perform there was truly like once in a lifetime. And when I was there, I got to perform in a production of a Shakespearean play called Much Ado About Nothing, which I don't really expect people to care about. But the reason it was meaningful to me was because I got an iconic role in that show. And so I got to play the iconic Shakespearean role at Shakespeare's Globe in London. And I was like, well, that's peak. That is peak like theater experience for sure. Yeah, much ado about nothing. Yeah, Much Ado About Nothing, which I got to do. Yeah, in London at the Globe.
That's awesome, man. Okay, well, hold that thought. My favorite role, I played one of the Three Little Pigs at one point. Just put it out there.
Okay, nice.
I could do Hollywood. I really could.
Were you in the house of straw, sticks, or brick?
I think I was in the house of straw, man. I let it go.
Your ass got blown away, homie.
Yeah, I'm done for. I was baking at that point.
Yeah, you were.
Well, I think we've talked about a lot of great stuff today. So I appreciate your time, man. Would love to run it back when you get another opportunity. But feel free to just hang out for a second. I'll stop the recording and then we'll sign out from there. Okay.
Awesome, dude. I appreciate it. Yeah, this was a lot of fun.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate you joining in on another episode. Peace. Actually, hold on. Where can we find you on social media before we go?
Yeah. If y'all want to follow me on Instagram, my name is Luke Diamond. That was taken on Instagram. So my handle is at Duke Limond. So it's DUKE _ LIAMOND at Duke Limond. And yeah, y'all can find it all my ultra running stuff. I've got some other adventures coming down the pike. So you'll find everything there.
Cool, man. All right, guys. Till next time. Peace.